You're watching Cable 2.
Good evening again, and welcome back to the December 15th Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education meeting. I'm Shay Woodbury, Chair of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education, and we want to welcome back our viewers on Channel 2 and also you whom are in the audience. If we can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we will remain standing for the invocation. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray, please. We ask for your guidance tonight and wisdom tonight during our school board meeting. We ask that you make us wise, make us brave, and make us strong during these trying and troubling times. Grant us peace together as a board and help us understand what the main purpose is for us to be board members, our kids, our teachers. Let us be the best that we can tonight and move forward. We ask in your name, amen.
Before we go to the next item on our agenda, which is actually our agenda review, I want to kind of adjust an announcement, and I want to, of course, use the privilege of the chair to share these comments. So I just want to share, as everyone is aware, the world these days is full of opinion, judgment, and blame. Everyone kind of seems to be on the edge. The pandemic has placed us all in uncomfortable situations for a variety of reasons. Every one of us has had to say, do, or be a part of something that was not normal, and though the vaccinations are making their way to our community as we speak, the end of this trying time still seems far away. We have heard from many of you recently about things you may have seen in the media or on social media. Many items make it seem as if our board is at odds with one another. It is no secret we have different opinions about how we respond to this pandemic. That is why we are here to represent the different views and opinions of our constituents, our parents, this community. Each one of us has the right to a difference of opinion. Each one of us has the ability to think differently than the other. Each one of us has the right to live our lives the best way that we know how to. But I want our community to know I can safely speak for every member of this board when I say we recognize that as elected officials, as school board members, we are held to higher standards. We know that we should be nothing less than exemplary role models for our students. Our students are watching us, looking to us to teach, lead, guide, and represent all of their best interests. I hope the community knows that as a board, we want to be those role models. We want to be those leaders, and we want to be those individuals that work together. It's tough at times, and we all have had moments of struggle and strife, but we appreciate you, the community, and our students for keeping us accountable. We value your support, but also ask that you join us in modeling respectful conversations and dialogue. It is only together that we can end this pandemic, and together that we can share those important life lessons and decisions, even when there are differences of opinions on the best ways to do it. So as we head into the holidays, I also want to remind my fellow board members, our staff, our students, and families to please remember the safety guidelines during the winter break. They may be cumbersome, even uncomfortable, but wearing a mask, washing our hands often, distancing from others, and staying away from large gatherings and social events is the best way we can all reduce the spread, lower the numbers in our community, and keep our schools safe for children. All of these things are going to help will help us to work together. So happy holidays, and thank you for allowing me that privilege of the chair. The next item on the agenda is the agenda review. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Are there any questions or discussion? All in favor, let it be known by aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is reserved for special recognitions. As we have weathered the pandemic, you know, we have had to come up with new ways to safely do things that are still important parts of this meeting. One very important piece we have missed out on in recent weeks are the board special recognitions. In working with our communications team and Cable 2, we are introducing a new feature to the meeting tonight, the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board Spotlight. During the last meeting of the month, we will share a special video showcasing our special recognitions. Since it is often difficult, especially in these times, to have students, student performers, staff members, and those in our district worthy of recognition come here to our meetings, our communications team is going to them and giving us a look inside these people and showcasing why these recognitions are so very special. So let's take a look at tonight's special recognitions and shine our board spotlight on some outstanding things that's happening in our school district.
You're watching Cable 2.
This school will honestly be that high school experience in my heart forever.
I think she is the epitome of what a Raider is supposed to look like at school.
Hi, I'm Destiny Okonkwo, and I'm a senior at Ronald Reagan High School.
We had nominated her a little over a month ago for the National Association of Black Educators, in partnership with Microsoft, was giving away a Microsoft Surface Book to a deserving graduating senior in your school. We found out this week that she won, and so we brought her in today to give her that Microsoft Surface Book, and we presented it to her and her mother. I feel like that there was only one choice, and they made the right choice, which is you. So we want to give this to you and tell you how proud we are of you. Yay!
I was kind of sweating a little bit because it was like I was the center of attention, and I never really get that. So it was really amazing. It makes me really proud because knowing that we're a 4 AA school, a big population, and Principal Royal told me that I'm the best. That just made me feel really good. And
man, she just erupted into tears. I mean, she just so thankful and appreciative and just humble and gracious. I gotta be honest, I'm probably a little misty-eyed myself. Because it's just wonderful seeing a youngster like her who has given so much to be able to actually receive. So
it's a very big deal because my mom, she's a single parent, so I know it would have been a hard hassle for her to find where she's gonna get me a locked out for college, and that really took off stress off her hands, and it really helped me out in the future.
Whether you were to have won this or not, there's never been a kid with more of a ray of sunshine in our building. You're just not going to find just what we feel like is a true representative of what it means to be a Raider. It's been one of the best days of this school year for me, and I love to see our students at Reagan be recognized for their achievements and their character and the things that they do, such as Destiny. It's always very affirming to what our mission is with our kids.
But honestly, it's amazing here. The teachers, staff, students, everybody just gets along here. And everybody, like they say, no Raider rides alone.
Tomorrow we rise.
We were considering just not having chorus this year and have them take a break.
When we've been led and we're far from home.
I got this idea to write a song that my students can do in a virtual choir format. And I said, well, you know, I could get my feet wet in terms to doing a virtual choir. We wouldn't otherwise be making music videos, but hey, COVID hit, and now we're making music videos, and now we're going to do it.
Together.
Over time, it evolved from my kids' desire to make music together into almost 200 people making music together from their living rooms. I wanted to take that situation that we were in and not just take lemons and turn them into lemonade, but take lemons and turn them into lemon art. This is the right time to do something like this, and this is the right medium to do something like this. And what is being said needs to be said, and the people that are coming together need to be lifted up, and they need to come together, and this project needs to be seen.
Tomorrow we rise.
Thank you. At this time, we will hear public comments on the agenda items. Please know we reserve this time to hear comments only on the items that are on tonight's agenda, either for action or discussion. Direct your comments to me as the chair only, and know that although we will not respond, I may direct you to someone that is on our staff when it is appropriate. Please remember to be respectful, kind, and know that we cannot talk about sensitive or private student or personnel information in this public setting. You will have 3 minutes to speak at this time, and what I will do, because we have comments from both in-person and virtual, I'll allow the in-person comments to go first, so if you want to then leave afterwards, since I know there's some sensitivity in being in the space, and then I will go to the virtual callers. The first person on the list is Miss Eunice Campbell. Yes.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Eunice Campbell, and I'm coming to you tonight as the precinct chair for Brown Douglas Precinct 201 of the Democratic Party for Forsyth County. School districts play important roles within the life of local communities, and they are, to varying degrees, democratic institutions that should be devoted to the preservation of the democratic process. But what happens when the lack of a clear policy threatens to disenfranchise citizens by removing their voice, often the only accountability mechanism to defend democracy? It is quoted, "The tyranny of a prince is not so dangerous to the public welfare as the apathy of a citizen in a democracy." The 60 precinct chairs and vice chairs of the Forsyth County Democratic Party District 1 Executive Committee are the only officials and legitimate spokespersons for District 1 according to the North Carolina Democratic Party Plan of Organization. On Saturday, December the 5th, 2020, the Forsyth County Democratic Party Executive Committee nominated and selected by election Shanita Johnson, a Democrat and long-term public education advocate who resides in District 1, as its official nominee to the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education for filling the vacant District 1 Democratic seat. The District 1 Executive Committee is requesting that the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education appoint Shanita Johnson as the only legitimate and rightful placement. Unless the school board calls for a special election, the District 1 organized precincts are the only legitimate partisan representatives of the voters. Shanita Johnson's selection by District 1 Democrat precinct chairs and vice chairs represent 47,390 Democratic registered voters, where over 41,000 of these voters are African American. According to Phillip Carter, a former party chair, Any other appointment process for this District 1 Democratic seat will effectively disenfranchise these thousands of District 1 Democratic voters. That's nothing less than voter suppression. Historic precedents from the Winston-Salem School Board, including recent District 2 appointments for all other vacant seats, elected seats in Winston-Salem, has been to select a replacement from the same party affiliation of the vacancy and also from vacating member district wards, where Democrats use the North Carolina Democratic Planning Organization, such as Paul Lowe, Fleming Elamine, Commissioner for District 1, Doran Montgomery, District 72, and Annette Scipio, councilperson.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. We did receive your email with your letter, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. We
Yes,
just
ma'am.
want y'all to give democracy a chance.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Phillip Carter. I think we may be having some sound issues. They may have to come, too far back, yes. Okay, thank you.
Good evening,
Good
Madam
evening.
Chair, distinguished school board members. My name is Phillip Carter, zip code 27101. I'm here this evening to ensure that the citizens and groups are getting accurate information regarding the Democratic Party and our process for filling Democratic vacancies within Forsyth County. Although there may be individual citizens, associations, and even auxiliaries within our party that have preferences toward a particular candidate, the Democratic Party is very clear and united in its policies and procedures within our North Carolina State Democratic Party's Plan of Organization, Section 3.12, which upholds the appointment of Shanita Johnson as elected representatives by our precinct members residing in District 1 within the Forsyth County Democratic Party. We, the precinct chairs and vice chairs, take our role to uphold democracy very seriously. The Democratic Party's Plan of Organization and its procedures are vital to upholding the democratic process we've been entrusted with. And it is because we adhere to our values, policies, practices, and procedures that the Democratic Party is united in its efforts to support representative government throughout democracy. And we encourage the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education to do the same. We wanted to make sure that we were able to clarify the Democratic Party's position. And while we support the board appointing Shanita Johnson as the legitimate candidate as our representation on the Forsyth County School Board for District 1, every level of government in this county has followed the democratic processes to fill vacancies on their boards when replacing a Democratic member. Even the City Council of Winston-Salem, when it realized that it didn't have a process that was fair and respectful of the voters of the East Ward, but would in fact disenfranchise the voters of the East Ward, recanted and opted to use the democratic processes for filling not one, but 2 vacant seats on its council. Furthermore, City Council's only Republican member, being a person of high integrity and ethics, even said, I quote, "I shouldn't have a say in who represents the East Ward. If the school board, especially those that are the Democratic Party, don't take a stand for democracy and appoint whom the people have rightfully chosen as their District 1 school board representative, but instead subvert the will and rights of 47,000 Democratic voters, which 41,000 are African American, then those voters are not living in a democracy, nor have they elected servants, but have been given wings to dictators and pirates of democracy."
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Tamara, it looks like Montague. You can correct the pronunciation when you come up, I'm sorry.
It's Lamontagne.
Lamontagne, oh geez, I really had it wrong, sorry.
It's okay, most people do. I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some gaps we're seeing in the remote learning. My child is still not achieving her potential after 9 months of virtual learning. Until this year, my daughter has never sent so much as an email or been given instruction in keyboarding and you all are expecting success. Many of her teachers pass the buck to me. They tell me to sift through weeks of Canvas assignments. They refer me to outside sources without providing specifics about what my child needs. They refer me to IT. Why am I doing their job? My child is struggling in one class in particular. I hired a tutor to help her, and the assignments she needed to revisit were not available on Canvas for the tutor to review with her. I reached out to the teacher, and today she replied to me, "I am glad to know that your child is receiving help from a tutor to better prepare her for Math 1 next year." I was under the impression that we still have half a year left to go. Have we all just given up? At the end of the first quarter, my child was told by her teachers that the grace period is over. You've had 9 months to get this right. When is your grace period over? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Val Young.
Good evening, Board Chair, Board, and Ms. McManus. I was glad when I saw on the agenda that we were going to hear about the process for the vacancy on the board. As a teacher, we taught our children the 7 habits of a happy child, and then it's also the 7 habits of an effective person. My favorite one is habit number 5, which says, seek first to understand and then be understood. The one thing that I know about people is that you need to know how something is being done and why. It gives us comfort, it helps us move forward. Well, we as FCAE, we had our own process when we thought about the vacancy. And we looked at past interview candidates that we had interviewed before. We looked at consistency. Has this person been involved in our school system? We looked at, does this person uphold our core values? And we landed on Alex Bohannon. Other organizations and leaders have chosen their nominees, and we respect their process. We also respect your process as we listen to it. No matter who you are, no matter who you choose as a board member, it is our hope that that person lives and breathes equity and also upholds the core values of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools.
Thank you. Next, we have Rhonda Mays.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chairwoman Woodbury, the board, and Ms. McManus. I'm Rhonda Mays. I'm a school social worker in this district, but I'm speaking as an individual this evening. I want to talk to you this evening about your process of selecting a replacement board member. I've been watching over the years the various ways that this process have taken place. You know, I was very much a part of the process when board member Carolyn Hayes was appointed on the board. Board member Parker, I think at least twice, has been appointed to the board to fulfill a term. Each time, it's been a little bit different. You know, it hasn't been the same. And I would like to say, let's make certain you're taking a look at all of the nominees, look at their commitment, look at the fact that some of your nominees have ran for this position before. And one of the speakers before spoke about listening to the people's voice. Well, if you go back and look at the last election results, you will see the people's voice. All the people who had an opportunity to vote, not just a select few. And if you look at the results, you will see that Alex Bohannon was the next one who would be able to serve as the board member from the number of votes that he received during that election. Take a look at the results and look at what the people said, not just a select few. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Craig Lamontagne.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
I'm going to march through them one by one. Lead together. So this is going to be an initiative to discuss trauma of law enforcement. I wish we had an initiative on the agenda to discuss the trauma of COVID, remote learning, Canvas, some of the trauma that's been actively created by the members of the board in front of me. iCares, one stated purpose is to help with remote learning. Here it's for 450 kids. You needed more, you needed it sooner. It seems like it's a day late and $1 short. Your remote learning survey, according to the numbers you provided, 2,292 children have been inactive in all classes. Again, that seems like something worth putting a PowerPoint together and making an agenda item. Maybe they're having some trauma as well. One date is given, 10/2 to 10/8. I asked the board to note that the results of the survey are before the report cards, where a lot of parents like us were surprised with Fs that we had no warning about. Admiral Security, pay for the traffic control. Relief for Exceptional Children, seems slightly mistitled. It seems like it's more of a help program for teacher training. Again, should have been done sooner because your remote learning is a train wreck. SEL Panorama, $102,000 for surveys. Give it to the bus drivers. And talk to SurveyMonkey. Project Insight. Don't sign it unless you're going to get drug tested too. Because the idea that my daughter in 6th grade, if she's ever allowed to participate in a play, is going to be subject to drug testing, it's absurd. Concerning the vacancy and the motion to have it filled and the discussion of the process, I think someone behind the scenes should make a motion that that vacancy should be filled by a parent. I don't care what party, but a parent who has children actively engaged in the Winston-Salem Forsyth County school system. Activity bus, can't go to school, can't get people to drive the buses, seems like a misplaced priority for this board to be considering that purchase. Community blood drive, again, seems like a worthy cause, but we're encouraging social gathering, but we can't get our kids back to school. I hold this board to the announcement at the bottom of the agenda that our children are going to go back to school this January. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Monique Porman.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and superintendent. My name is Monique Porman. I'm one of the candidates who submitted their names to the Democratic Party with the filing for the vacancy on the board. I could just stand up here and just speak my truth. It's not about none of the candidates. It's not about a party. It's not about the organizations. It's not about none of that. What it's actually about and should have been about from the beginning was about the kids. We have big bickering, arguing, fussing, having all of this going on, but at the same time, you want to talk about accountability, you want to talk about who's been present, and you want to talk about what the Democratic Party done. The truth of the matter is, you can come to every school board meeting and sit here and learn everything you can, but it's like hitting on a hill of beans if you're not taking it back out into the communities and making it count where it need to count. You can talk about the Democratic Party process and how they do their things, and I'm not knocking them either, they did what they did. However, as one of the candidates who put their name in, I'm one of the very few who have been active in the communities, not just in the communities, but as well as with the school system, and not only in just my community. So I ask that when you do consider, and you look at the resumes and take everyone into consideration, that when you do this, you consider me as well, because I'm always going to be open and honest and truth, and speak my truth, and make it always about the kids first, as I did when I served on city council, when I made it about the constituents in the Northeast Ward and the citizens of Winston-Salem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Alfred Harvey.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Board, new superintendent. I believe in history. I believe history will set the course right for this board. In 1991, the NAACP came before this board and requested some demands to get black leadership on the board. They were rejected in kind. They were rejected in kind. And then a month later, they filed a lawsuit. Members on that lawsuit, Walter Marshall, Harry James, the Reverend Dr. William Fales, and Alfred Harvey. And before we were able to go, before have our lawsuit heard, the Forsyth legislative body decided that they would grant us members to be selected to the board, 2 from District 1. 2 from District 1. So I guess what I'm saying is, I was gerrymandered out of District 1. I sent my name in to this board because this board had in its policy, all you had to do was be a Democrat. That's what the board said. Now, when the chair of the Democratic Party refuses to show up for a meeting on a Saturday, whatever they call it, December the 5th or whatever they call it, and he doesn't show up, that tells you something. That he's not in line with with whoever they nominate. I'm a retired school teacher from Simon Green Atkins High School. I give each and every one of you the opportunity to look at my personnel file. You can go look at it. You'll see my evaluations as an instructor in this school system. You'll see my work in District 1 throughout my entire life. I'm still the chairman and president of the 14th Street Alumni Association. We've had historical markers placed in the community. I think when you put somebody on this board, you need to put somebody on this board who has the wherewithal, the ability to bring people together, because Chair Woodbury, this board does need to come together. It is not united. One thing you don't do, you don't practice what you preach. When you go before the ministers' conference and disparage a former superintendent of schools here in Winston-Salem, that's a no-no.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
That's a no-no.
Thank you.
And I think this board needs to correct that.
Thank you. We're going to transition over to our remote callers. First, we have Miss Carolyn Hi Smith.
Evening.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Hi Smith, and as the Vice Chair of the 606 Democratic Voting Precinct in the Board of Education District 1, I represent all of the 606 Democratic voters who voted for the District 1 Board of Education members in 2018. I also participated in the December 5th Forsyth County Democratic Party's District 1 Executive Committee's election of Shanita Johnson, a long-term public education and equity advocate, where she overwhelmingly beat out 6 other Democratic candidates, including Alex Bohannon, endorsed by the FCAE, and Morticia Porman, endorsed by the Young Democrats. Shanita Johnson is the official nominee and referral from the District 1 Executive Committee to the school board for the current vacant District 1 Democratic seat. Therefore, Shanita Johnson is the only legitimate and rightful replacement that should be appointed by the school board. To reiterate, unless the school board calls for a special election, the District 1 Democratic organized precincts are the only legitimate partisan representatives of the voters. Shanita Johnson's selection by the District 1 precinct chairs and vice chairs represents 47,390 Democratic registered voters, where over 41,000 are African American. please abide by historical precedent and select the District 1 Democratic Party's process for selecting the candidate who lives in and represents the voters of District 1. Shanita Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. D. Williams. Okay. Next, we have Mrs. Karen Holder.
Good evening. Good evening, Board. I am calling this evening in regards to the inappropriate behavior and cyberbullying that Andrea Bramers has inflicted upon another board
That's not on our agenda. You're going to have to call back at the public comments, the open public comments.
I'm sorry?
I said, that's not one of our agenda items. You will have to call back at the open public comments.
Okay. I will wait. Call me back.
Next, we have Mrs. Cecilia Lagos.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I am associate pastor of the Iglesia Renuevo in Winston-Salem. I am also part of the Hispanic Community Congress here in Winston-Salem, who represents 15,000 Latino households in Forsyth County. Over the past year, we worked with the district leadership to increase the number of bilingual staff. We are pleased that Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools has hired 2 additional interpreters. This will help many families navigate the school system in a better way. Tonight, I would like to address the agenda item, consider approval of proposed equity advisory members list. We are thrilled to see such a committee. Unfortunately, we were not aware of the opportunity to apply. We are concerned that the proposed list of members does not include any Hispanic Latino community members who are not also school system employees. Our leadership team suggests that there should be representation from parents experiencing the challenges of Latino immigrant families who are not familiar with the school system, not only district staff, although we also value their perspectives. Given that there is no yet representation from Hispanic parents, we will appreciate the opportunity to nominate a parent representative to apply before the committee is finalized. We believe that this will ensure that the Equity Committee understands our community's challenges and can address them effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last, we have Mrs. D. Washington.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Dee Washington, and I'm a parent of a 3rd grader in District 1. I'd like to start my comments this evening just by showing a lot of respect and gratitude to the members of this board for the work they're doing and the circumstances under which you are doing them. I have the utmost respect and high esteem for all of you as colleagues, partners, and partners in the work of educating our children, even in the wake of what can often seem like insurmountable differences. This will be the first time that I'm speaking before the Board of Education, although I have known some of you for many years and been inspired by the work of others on the board in most recent time. I would like to start by reminding this board of something I've also had to say to the Winston-Salem City Council, and it is this. It is one thing for me as a District 1 voter to advocate my responsibility as a voter, and quite another thing for a governing body to actively take it away through an ambiguous process and loopholes. As a citizen, as a parent, and a voter, it is my responsibility to vote, to stay informed, to participate as actively as I am able. and that's my responsibility. But when I do my job, show up and participate, I do not expect it to be indiscriminately overturned on a dubious kind of technicality. I believe it requires a strength and resolve that when we are unclear to default to our, in our processes, to default to our known practices of democracy. It is unfathomable for me as a parent to understand anything else. I had a colleague and a friend go through the process held by the Democratic Party, and she was not selected. And although we were disappointed as parents of District 1, we were very pleased at the process and the selection of Shanita Johnson, whom we both know and very much respect. Tonight, I would ask the school board to carefully consider their role in the process of filling this seat and respect the District 1 democratic process and the ability to self-govern and choose for ourselves by appointing Shanita Johnson to the board. Again, I have done my job as a parent and citizen, and so did many others, and I ask that you respect the work of the representatives of our children, their parents, the voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sherrill, did D. Williams come back on? Okay, thank you. The next agenda item is discussion items, and first we will hear from Tricia McManus, our interim superintendent. She will lead us in a discussion around Lead Together initiative.
Thank you, and good evening, board chair and board members. So I'm very excited to bring this item to you this evening for discussion. It was 6 months ago exactly when I was brought into a conversation with Chair Woodbury and Board Member Motzinger, along with Triad Restorative Justice and Layla Garms at the Winston-Salem Foundation, and a few other community members, along with Dr. Hairston. And at that time, this idea of Lead Together, this initiative, was presented. And I'm very excited to say, 6 months later, lots of meetings, lots of talking, lots of dialogue. We're actually ready to kick it off. And I want to thank the folks that are listed on this slide. The district is not funding this project. The Winston-Salem Foundation is funding this project. And thank you, Layla Garms, because she's been meeting with us. She's going to actually say a few words in a moment. Triad Restorative Justice is a partner, and the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office is another partner. So thank you to Sheriff Kimbrough for agreeing to this program, and you're going to hear in a minute from Lieutenant Bethea, who's been kind of boots on the ground with it. And so basically, here is our before action review goal statement, and Layla took us through a series of meetings where we talked about the purpose of this so that we could all get on the same page with it. And so basically, the whole goal of this is to improve relationships among students, school resource officers, and school administrators. And it all boils down to our students have lived experiences, and we need to hear their voice. We need to hear their voice. We need to be open to listening, and we need to be able to put ourselves in their shoes as we interact with them. And so basically, they're learning through this process how to lead restorative circles. Triad Restorative Justice is training the students right now. They've been working directly with SROs up to this point who have gone through the training. They've actually participated in restorative circles. And you can see on this next slide, and this was before we started going virtual. We had a couple of, I think, one face-to-face session or two, and now everything's virtual with our community numbers with the group. But I will say you can see what the components are. It's adult training and developing restorative mindset instead of a punitive mindset. And that's really important as we work with our students. And basically, monthly student-led circles with SROs, school administrators, you can see on the slide. And then we're piloting it in 2 schools to start with. So thank you to our principals, Carol Montague at Carver, and Brad Royal, who you saw earlier tonight on our presentation at Reagan. And so with that, I'm going to stop and see if our folks that are on Teams. We actually have Ellen Fox from Triad Restorative Triad Restorative Justice. We've got Layla Garms from the Winston-Salem Foundation, and we have Lieutenant Bethea from the sheriff's office. And so I wanted to see if any of you would like to make a comment about your commitment and why you are in full support of this project. I'll start. Ellen, we want to start with you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Ellen Fox. I am a product of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and I had a very positive experience. However, as Tricia mentioned, we have a lot of people who have very different experiences. And I am seeing Lead Together bring many different perspectives in, and it's an opportunity to first listen to all of these different perspectives, create this mosaic, but ultimately empower youth with a skill set, a tool, a resource, and a space to share their experiences in a way that the traditional hierarchy of school and also the traditional setting of school doesn't really afford this type of youth adult equity. And so, so far we have done 3 trainings with the SROs. We're in the middle of our 4th. And we just met with Carver and Reagan last Thursday and heard from the school support staff, who will be the school-based adult team at each site. And then, the most important people who we haven't met yet are the students themselves. So, we just want to provide and use Lead Together to provide these consistent, sincere opportunities for their voices, not only to get heard, but for them to propose ways to make their own communities feel safer and hopefully act upon these proposals. So that being said, I think Layla will speak more to the emergent learning strategy of how we've stitched this together, but ultimately I'm seeing this project as something that is evolving and is listening to the needs and the perspectives in a sincere way. And every day that I work on this, I feel like something shifts, something is brought up, something is pointed out, and it gets stronger. So I'm excited. I'm so proud.
She's muted. You're muted, Ellen. But we got you. Somehow you muted at the end, but we're going to go anyway to let's go to Lieutenant Bethea, and then we'll conclude with Layla Garms. So Lieutenant Bethea, did you want to say a couple of words?
Yes, good evening. How everybody doing this evening?
Good evening.
On behalf of Sheriff Kimbrough and the SRO section, it has been a pleasure to work alongside with the Lead Together team. I think this would be a great opportunity for our SROs and to get the core values, integrity and respect that the students have for each other. And the roundtable we've been having with the Lead Together team has been great, positive feedback from the SROs. It will give a better understanding that the SRO is not there for only school safety, but also there for the difference between different situations that the kids go through every day. So we're so excited to be a part of this team.
Thank you, Lieutenant Bethea. And Layla Garms, the foundation, thank you all for funding this project for us. Did you want to say a few words?
Yes, Tricia, it's really our pleasure to be backing this incredible project. I think that from the beginning, it's just been so exciting for us to see this come to fruition. It's student-centered, it's asset-based, and it's attempting to really address some systemic issues, starting at the core with school resource officers and school administrators who create policies and cultures in schools, and bringing them together with students to think through how they can make it a more positive and affirming environment for everyone concerned. So it's just incredibly powerful, placing like the onus on the students, putting the power in their hands to be the change that they want to see. So we're just really excited about this project. We have a focus on equity in education. Anti-bias cultures and practices are one of our main priorities, as are positive and constructive behavior intervention strategies. So all of this just plays so nicely into the kind of work that we want to see. It's been an incredibly collaborative project, and all the partners have been just so engaged, and I'm just really excited to see what comes next.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So that concludes the presentation. If anyone has questions or comments.
So will this start in January when?
Yes. Yes, so the student training part will start in January.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I think Elizabeth has her hand up, Board Member Motzinger.
I just want to say how excited and happy I am that this is coming to fruition, that the people we're seeing who have been part of this have been working really hard for a long time trying to bring this cultural change into our district, but even bigger into our community as a whole. And I couldn't be happier that this work is happening. And so I'm really excited for what change is possible. And this has been a hard year, but we have a great new beginning. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. McManus.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have the Andrew Kraft, our Chief Equity and Accountability Officer, and he's going to talk with us about the iCares grant.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Superintendent McManus, members of the board. I'm excited to share with you some good news. We got the iCares grant. This is a competitive grant distributed to states and then awarded to local education agencies. I have to recognize our lead grant writer, Sharika Hargrove. She did great work. Latandra Vance, who's our budget specialist, and Justin Long, who is our program manager for data collection. Because of their hard work, we got the iCares grant. Let me tell you what that grant is for, who's going to benefit from that grant, and how we're going to partner with outside agencies to execute. So this is the Innovative Child Care and Remote Extended Support, or iCares grant. We were awarded the maximum amount, $500,000. And the eligible schools are those that are designated as low-performing schools and do not currently have a 21st century grant. So the reason this grant is in place is so that we can provide additional child care assistance and tutoring assistance and remote learning. So this is how we're breaking up the 9 schools that we're going to serve through this grant. You see the 9 schools listed there. About 450 students, it's actually a little more than that, but at 450 to 500 students across these 9 schools will get additional tutoring services as a result of this grant. And so to deliver these services, we're partnering with 3 outside agencies. You recognize the names of these agencies because you know that they already work in our schools. They do good work. Imprints Cares will serve 3 of the schools. Alpha Best will serve 3 of the schools, and the YMCA will serve 3 of the schools. It'll be their responsibility to hire the site leads and the staff and to execute on the program that we outlined in the grant application. So we're excited about this. We meet with these agencies tomorrow. We met with the principals last week. Services will begin in February. Are there any questions about the iCares grant? Okay, thank you. It's exciting news. We're happy.
I'm not familiar with the Alpha Best. Is that a private company in town?
Yes, ma'am, it is. Yeah, very similar to Imprints and the YMCA. But yeah, they're another after-school provider in town.
Oh, thank you. Oh, Board Member Parker.
So they'll, all 9 schools will be doing it at the same time. So I assume that since they'll be doing 3 schools each, that they'll have rotating times, days, whatever, when they service children or.
Right, so they're going to be serving them simultaneously after school.
After school.
They will hire staff in all 3 of those schools, a site lead and tutors as well to serve students, about 50 students at each site.
Okay, so it'll all be after school. So.
Yes, ma'am,
okay,
that's right.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions around that issue, we will, I think, Mr. Kraft, you will stay up and talk about the results of the remote learning survey?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Nicolette Grant, our Chief Academic Officer.
That's right. We brought the remote learning survey to you before we administered it. We got your feedback. We incorporated that feedback, and we have now administered that survey. So I want to talk to you about the survey itself and what we learned, and then Nicolette can talk to you about our responses to what we learned. It's important you know who took the survey. There were 3 different groups that we focused on, but we also want to consider who took the survey in light of our participation numbers in our remote learning. Then I'll let you know how those respondents answered the questions that they were prompted with, And finally, how Ms. Grant's department, instructional services, will respond to the data that we've gathered. So we had 3 separate groups that we administered this survey to, that is students, teachers, and parents. You can see the racial breakdown of students, and I would emphasize to you that no, this doesn't reflect the district, and that's not good, obviously, right? If we want to make conclusions about how the district feels about remote learning, particularly in terms of students, then we would want our respondents to reflect the district. Unfortunately, our student group does not reflect the district as a whole. Just to remind folks, we're about 40% white, about 30% Hispanic, and about 30% African American. Next, we surveyed teachers. Now, this is a little closer to our overall demographics. We also got about 2,000 respondents from teachers. So we feel pretty good about the data that we've collected here from teachers being representative of our teachers, but as I say, a little less so of our students. And then finally, this is a look at how parents responded. Again, that's not representative of our district, and so it's a little harder to draw hard conclusions from the data we have here. So again, for the voice of teachers, we feel like we were able to capture that well through this survey, less so with parents and students. And so I do want to emphasize, David's CISC team is working hard. In fact, right now they're translating this meeting. And so families at home, particularly Latino families, you notice that we have a very low Hispanic response rate on this survey, and it's still open. So families can still respond to this survey, and he asked that I mention that. So now we've answered that question, who took the survey? So let's look at that data in light of our participation in remote learning. What I've done here is just taken out one average week from our Canvas data. So this data here indicates which students were not active during this fairly typical week. This is a week of October 2nd to October 8th. And so what you notice is about 2% of the white students in our district were not active in Canvas during this week. But about 6% of our Hispanic students were not active in Canvas during this week, and about 6% of our African American students were not active in Canvas during this week. So it's important to consider who's using our remote learning platforms, who's not, in light of these survey results. Okay, you notice that these results are different when you consider who actually answered the questions on the survey. It's just important for you to have that context as we look next at the answers that we got to the questions we posed. So the first question was about the Canvas platform itself. We wanted to know and measure how people felt about the Canvas platform, and overall the responses were very positive. They were positive from parents, students, and teachers. Kevin's department has worked very hard, and all his team, to make sure that Canvas is an accessible platform. If there was one exception, it would be for K2 students, but we think that speaks a little less to Canvas and a little more to remote learning in general. The next area we wanted to measure is how satisfied teachers, parents, and students were with the synchronous instructional aspect of remote learning. That is, live one-on-one or live teacher-student classroom ratio instruction. Overall, we received positive responses from teachers and parents. Students were positive, but they were slightly less positive. They were a little more neutral, but there were not many negative responses from students. Tended towards the neutral to positive, while teachers and parents were overall positive. Next, we wanted to measure overall how respondents would describe the level of difficulty. Their answers were very easy, neutral, challenging, or very challenging. And the majority of respondents answered neutral. That's actually a good thing. We feel like the responses weren't that it's too challenging, and the responses didn't indicate that it was too easy either. And that was from all groups, from teachers, parents, and students. Next, we measured the various aspects of instruction that is delivered. So you know that some of instruction is teacher delivery of that instruction, right? Some of it is student practice. Some of it is assessment, quizzes, tests, etc. So we wanted to measure all of those. The teachers seem to indicate that those aspects of instruction are good or even very good. The parents and students, they didn't indicate it was negative, but they were a little more neutral in their responses. They did not tend towards the positive or negative side. They were more neutral. It's interesting when you see a difference between the teachers and the parents and the students. We saw a lot of differences here when we asked teachers, parents, and students to compare remote learning in the spring of 2020 to the fall of 2020. Teachers, and this is good news, teachers have indicated that they have what they need to do their job. And in fact, those needs have been met in an improved way this fall. Teachers have the computers they need and other devices as well. All groups believe that their use of Canvas has improved, so everyone is becoming comfortable with this platform that is Canvas. That's good news as well. Teachers report that motivation has improved, and yet students and parents indicated motivation has declined. So that's interesting and something that we have to pay attention to. For some reason, there's a disconnect between what parents and students believe about the views of online learning and the experience of online learning with teachers. Teachers also think students are engaging each other, while parents and students report that students are engaging each other less. This is an interesting disconnect, and you'll hear Ms. Grant talk about this in a second. We really need to figure out how it is that we give students the opportunity to engage one another. You know that that's a fairly easy thing to do in a classroom, maybe more challenging to do in the remote learning setting. So this is certainly something we want to respond to. There are a lot of supports provided by the district. And the next thing we wanted to measure was, do they know what those supports are? Do they know how to access those reports? Right? So we really wanted to know which of our supports are in place appropriately, and students and parents are gaining access to those. So they indicated the increased social emotional support and child care support was needed. These are areas that parents, and by the way, this was directed specifically at parents. Parents are telling us and students are telling us that we need additional social emotional support and we need child care support. This is a challenge that parents reported running into. But they did indicate that the free meals, the Safe Return website, technical support that are available, all of these things are beneficial. They know how to access, and they've been positive additions to the support that the district is providing. So are supports available when students are struggling? It's interesting because teachers are responding overwhelmingly yes. We're there for students and we provide the support that they need. And interestingly, students and parents were more neutral. Overall, they were not negative towards that, but they were not as positive as teachers. So sometimes when there's a perception difference, right, we have to pay attention to that. And our teachers have to think about, although I think I'm doing everything I can to meet the needs of my students, maybe there are some other things that I can do. Again, Ms. Grant will speak to that. This is an interesting answer that we received. You'll see on the bottom, all respondent groups said there's too little time allotted for physical activity. Our kids need to move. We all know that. And so we may want to pay attention to how it is that we get our students to be active during the day. Before the school year began, we provided professional development to teachers in lots of different areas, and these are some that stuck out to us in the survey. The Canvas professional development that was provided was very helpful. Overwhelmingly, everybody feels good about using this Canvas platform. You saw that turn up earlier in the survey. A couple of areas that teachers in particular didn't feel as strong about was professional development was delivered on unpacking unit plans. We need to revisit that with our teachers and using the new textbook resources. So those are two areas that we need to follow up on to provide extra support to teachers based on their responses to this survey. This is an interesting difference here when we asked about the attendance policy, the clarity of the attendance policy. Parents and students reported they understand the attendance policy. They know when their child is marked absent and they know when their child is present. But the teachers report there's a little less understanding of the attendance policy. That may not be surprising, and here's kind of our read into it. We don't know this for sure, but there's a difference between a child being present on campus or present remotely, and so we probably need to help our teachers understand how that needs to be coded in PowerSchool. That's one thing we're considering here as we work with our teachers in response to this data. And finally, we ended the survey with some open-ended questions, and I'm just going to go over some of the responses that we received from the three different groups. Parents said they liked Flex Friday and they wanted that to continue. They want more accountability for teachers. They want more of this social emotional learning, so not just about academics, but how do we care about the whole child? They want opportunities for students to socialize. You heard earlier about group work, right? So there's something, an opportunity for us to learn there. And they also want the CARES teams expanded. I can imagine, that's great news, right, that we're hearing that the CARES teams are providing good support. I want to figure out how we might be able to expand their support. What did students say when we asked them that open-ended question? They also reported that they like the Flex Friday. They want more support provided to their teachers. They see that their teachers are working hard, and they see that online learning is a challenging thing. And interestingly, students reported they want to socialize and they want to be able to connect with other students. Isn't that interesting that that's been a theme throughout this survey? And finally, when we asked the teachers, what did they want with that open-ended question? They want help with implementing this hybrid model. As these students are coming back into the classroom and they have students at home and they have students in their classroom, they report that that's a challenge for them and they want additional support there. They also want support with online learning for K-2 students, right? That's a challenging place to teach kids in the online environment, particularly that age group, and they want some extra support there. They want higher expectations for students and they want improved communication of those expectations. And so finally, if we put all this together, you know, online learning is not what we all like. Remote learning is not our preference. We know that we're good with kids in our building, and we wish they could be there right now. So we're not surprised to see that there are negative feelings reported towards this remote learning. Of course, none of us chose this pandemic that we're in the middle of right now, and we're working hard to do the best we can to respond to it. So now, Ms. Grant will talk to you a little bit about how our district is going to respond to this data that we collected through this survey.
Good evening, board members and Mrs. McManus. Thank you so much, Andy, and thank you to all the teachers and the students and the parents that completed the survey. We really appreciate your input. Again, the survey is open a little bit longer so we can get more diverse opinions from all of our families and our students. And so with the data that we do have, we want to make sure that we drill down to it and really target the supports that we provide. What Andy shared with the data in our small group was around the middle school participation. We had a lot of middle schoolers who provided input on the survey, so the socialization being extremely important for them, and we want to make sure that we hear from some of the other grade levels as well. Another one of the changes that we are going to be looking at, besides drilling into the data and targeting support, is to look at the office hours support that we have. We have had some time provided for teachers if they wanted to drop in for support, but we want to change that. Instead of having a time where teachers have to drop in for the support, and we push into their planning more to help them to unpack their unit plans. I've been out visiting schools a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I just want to say to the teachers, you have done such a phenomenal job. As Andy mentioned, we were never prepared as teachers in college to teach in this remote and concurrent environment, but the teachers have been so resilient. It is absolutely amazing what they've been able to do, and I'm sure, 9 months ago, they never would have imagined what they could be able to do with Canvas and concurrent classrooms, and I just have seen such amazing work for our pre-K, K, and 1 that are in the classroom, and then all our 2 and high school remote learners. We also want to look at opportunities for micro PDs for both teachers and for administrators, which is just short little 30-minute sessions, ongoing PD instead of having a long period of time for professional development. We want to differentiate support for beginning teachers, work with the Student Services Department to look at how we can provide more social emotional support. We're going to continue to offer professional development for our teacher assistants, and that's thanks to the funding from the PEER project. And then we also will continue to offer PDs and record them so that teachers can watch them on demand. So those are some of the things that we're going to target. And I know as our students are coming back in January, we'll be in the schools as well to provide some on-the-ground coaching and support for teachers. Any questions for Andy or for myself?
On the survey, was it one survey per student, or could, I'm thinking of a family that may have shared custody. Could 2 parents do the survey, or?
Sure, 2 parents could have done the survey.
Okay,
yes,
so it wasn't limited to one.
That's right.
One, and also that was done, mid-October, 1st of October?
Survey was done during the month of November.
Right, but I'm sorry, I wasn't specific, the engagement piece.
That's right, the inactivity data I shared with you is 1 week in October, yes ma'am.
And when we were looking at some, and we were just looking at some on a weekly basis a little bit later into November, when we were looking at information, and that engagement, has it continued to decrease with student engagement and inactivity?
Sure, it's a good question. So we saw our best engagement right before the end of first quarter. So disengagement went down until first quarter, and then it began to creep back up since the beginning of second quarter. Interestingly, with the kindergarten and first grade students back, we really believe that our data around kindergarten and first grade is just not accurate because some of the students aren't using Canvas, they're engaging with their teachers directly. So what you'll see now is we're really reporting and focused on grades 2 through 12. And so we're seeing it frankly level off right now in terms of the disengagement, but that roughly 200 to 2,500 a week number is fairly accurate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Jonathan Wilson share with us the Admiral Security contract.
Good evening, Ms. McManus, Chair Woodbury, Board. I got the pleasure this afternoon or this evening to talk to you a little bit about the Admiral security contract, and that's not really about security, it's more about traffic control. Hopefully most of you are aware that Admiral has served the district since 2017. If you remember, the vendor that we had prior to them had to leave abruptly in the middle of the school year, and the board rushed to get this agreement with Admiral, and Admiral's done a really good job since coming on board. Historically, they've served somewhere between 49 and 50 schools. I put it that way because it kind of fluctuates between the two depending on where our needs are. For instance, this past year we had 2 guards at Paisley, and now that Paisley has the improvements on campus, we know that this year we'll only need 1 guard there. Just a little bit about what they do. We select the schools with areas that have high traffic volume or congested areas or places throughout the county that are hard to get on and off campus. So you would see somewhere between 1 or 2 traffic control officers in those areas that are chosen, and they serve a 1-hour post in the morning, 1-hour post in the afternoon. Sometimes you'll see just 1 in the afternoon because the morning traffic is okay. In the afternoon it gets bad. Primarily they assist with getting cars and buses on and off our campuses. We used to call them crossing guards, and that has kind of gone to the wayside because we don't have that many kids that walk to school anymore. But there's still a couple schools that they do that, and those duties are conducted as needed. And you'll see them equipped with the uniforms, reflective vest, stop paddles, and flashlights so that they are visible in the road. Hopefully you know, and maybe you're not just surprised to hear that since kids have returned to school in November, we have operated without any traffic control. I'm sure that a lot of our parents are very well aware of that fact. As we know that as additional grades return, that we're going to see additional traffic concerns grow. We obviously are seeing more kids ride cars than buses this year. We expect that to continue. And there's slower drop-offs because we're taking temperatures and we're screening kids as they come in the door. And the pickup times are even slower because we have to socially distance. We can't keep kids in one location. They're called from their classes and to go out to the cars to get in and go. So it's slower. So we know that beginning on January the 11th, we're going to need 42 schools. There's 32 elementary schools and 10 middle schools. I will tell you that is 1 additional elementary and 1 additional middle from what we saw last year, and that's just because we know that the high volume of cars is going to dictate that we need those, and that's going to be at a cost of about $155,000. After January the 25th, when our high school students start coming back, we want to assess the need for additional traffic. We don't want to just spend the money because it's there, but we want to go ahead and have the money set aside for 9 high schools that have historically needed traffic assistance, and if that's the case, it'll be somewhere around $35,000. And again, we only want to use that if needed. So I would recommend to you tonight Admiral Security Services for a total of $189,000. Any questions?
I know for several years we've talked about Meadowlark. What are we seeing at Meadowlark now? You know, I know it's been kind of congested, and we've had a lot of people talk about Meadowlark and trying to get in and trying to get out. Right. Do you see an advancement with what we're doing now as far as the traffic, and especially with all the apartments and things that are being built across the street from the school?
Yes, ma'am. It's a good question. So Meadowlark is a thorn in my side, to say the least, as far as the traffic is concerned. It's a very congested area. It's probably one of the worst traffic areas in the county, honestly. If you remember, and you'll still see those traffic improvements, I think, as part of the 2016 bond. Some of those things were set aside because we were waiting for the improvements by the city to be completed before we spent money on the campus and worked there. I will tell you, for those of you that have visited the campus recently in the past year or so, there was additional changes to the traffic flow within the parking lot. So we were able to get more cars off the road. And you actually may see that at some campuses across the district as we come back. Some schools who historically had maybe buses coming in the back with cars coming in front, some of that may be flipped around as we see how many kids come back in cars versus buses. So to answer your question, Meadowlark still has traffic congestion, and it will still continue to be that way probably until the city finishes their improvements, and then we get on campus and do ours. Yes, ma'am.
If there are no more questions, we will go to the next discussion item. Mary Todd Allen, our Chief Program Officer for Exceptional Children, will discuss the COVID-19 relief funds for exceptional children.
Good evening, Mrs. McManus and Chair Woodbury, board members. I'm here today to ask for your approval for 2 purchases using the funds that we received from the state under COVID-19 relief. Both purchases are over $100,000, so we bring that before the board. We received these funds, the third set of funds from the board, from the state at the end of November, and they had to be expended by December 30th. It's very difficult in that short amount of time to spend that amount of funds, but what we wanted to do was to be good stewards of the funds and find out what the teachers needed most in support of their teaching, both hybrid and remote. What we landed on was, first of all, there are 2 proposals within this request. One is approval of additional McGraw-Hill teacher manuals for EC teachers. EC teachers are using those products. They're using the remedial portion of those products in order to teach students with disabilities who are on the standard course of study. They received in the adoption 1 grade level, as all other teachers did, but we know that EC teachers teach multiple grade levels, and they also teach up and down grade levels as the students are not quite on grade level. So we know that they needed access to all the grade level materials with Wonders. And with this opportunity, with this money, presented us with an opportunity to give them access to all those curriculum materials. So the elementary schools that will receive a set of those books that teachers can then find the materials that they need depending on each individual student's needs. The second request within this, the second purchase within this request is a unique platform that has been developed to help teachers build capacity in writing standards-based IEPs. Standards-based IEPs have been around for about 12 years, and the entire nation is moving toward this as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act ties IEPs to standards. This platform will help our teachers build capacity by providing them access to both the state standards and the alternative standards for students with more significant cognitive disabilities, and helps them to tie together the students' present level of performance with where they are in relation to their grade placement, and not necessarily be deficit-based, but be standards-based IEPs. The platform is unique in that it helps, it is a capacity building software. It's not something we need to subscribe to for years and years. It's more of a embedded PD for teachers as they begin to write more higher quality IEPs for teachers. So we're asking for your approval for those 2 purchases using our COVID-19 funds. Are there any questions?
I do have a quick question. For exceptional children, are those who want to be getting their education in person, are they all back in school now?
Some of the students will return with their grade level. The students that are back in school right now are students who are on what we call separate setting. They had 80% or more of their learning is with students that also have disabilities. Okay. And then we also have a group of students that are assigned to different programs for their special needs and who have some unusual and different circumstances, and to meet their needs, we brought them back as well. And our OCS students who have to work toward graduation hours, and it's very difficult in this environment with COVID for them to get out and do work, so we brought them back so they could continue to work toward, matriculate toward graduation by getting some work-based hours. The state has let us waive some of those community-based hours, but we have some unique ways for them to learn work-based skills in school and keep them safe.
Anytime, I do have a question. So the IEP software, I know we've used numerous ones through the years. This actually can be the written IEP, or is it just a kind of a guideline with the standards that we're going by? Is it both, as opposed to just a form like the IEP, which you update and sign all through the year or years?
Well, it is completely different from ECATs that we use. That's where the form is that the teachers input.
Okay.
This is a development that is very unique in the field in that it takes your state standards, pulls those into the software, Teachers then put their progress monitoring and baseline data about the student in there, and it shows them the gap between where they are and the standard of the grade that they're placed in. And it also recommends research-based strategies to implement along the way. So it will be a great benefit to our teachers, especially our lateral entry teachers and our beginning teachers, in helping them understand how to tie a student's present level to fill that gap that's between them and their grade level.
Okay, great. That sounds wonderful for both the teachers and the parents. I mean, parents can actually see as well. And will they have access, whenever they get the written IEP report, will they get to see some of that standards based in how they're doing?
What they will see is a more improved present level in the IEP. They'll see one that is more clearly showing them where they are in comparison to the grade level standards. And it also helps them see what's possible in a school year, in an IEP year, how close we can start closing that gap and what steps need to happen so that the child, I think that the gap has always been a mystery. Mm-hmm. My child reads on this grade level, but they're in this grade level. And this will help teachers give them the terms that they need to use and also the explanation they need to use, as well as the strategies that they could consider as the IEP team decides, what do we do now? What do we do this year? And how do we close that gap?
Okay, great. That sounds wonderful.
It's amazing. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Amanda Walker, our program specialist, to discuss the SEL and Panorama service agreement.
She's remote.
Okay.
She'll be speaking.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Madam Chair Woodbury, other esteemed board members, and Interim Superintendent Ms. McManus. Can everyone hear me just fine?
Yes.
Great. Like you said, I'm Amanda Walker, the Social Emotional Learning Program Specialist for the district. First, I want to thank you all for everything that you do to address the social and emotional needs, especially during this time. Of not only our students, but also our families and all district staff. I'm proud to note that this past year we were recognized both statewide and nationwide for the innovative and effective SEL work that we're doing as a school district. And we want to continue to do this. Much of this work is made possible with the use of Panorama Education's platform, which allows us to address the social emotional needs and assess those, address family engagement, and also get some insight into staff well-being and school climate. Additionally, Panorama gives us the ability to merge various data sets, such as academics, attendance, and behavior, in order to better support our students' needs and growth, as well as to help with school-wide implementation of SEL programming and planning. So as we continue to elevate our stakeholder voices within our school district, we're able to work together as a community and use Panorama to maintain programming fidelity of social and emotional learning. In addition, we're able to align it with MTSS, multiple tiered systems of support, equitable practices within our school district, and most importantly, our district strategic plan goal 5, which addresses the specific SEL competency of sense of belonging. Panorama also has unique features such as the playbook, which helps to guide our staff in schools and in the district in terms of coaching and teaching best practices for social emotional learning for our students. So I'm here today to present on the next slide the Panorama Education Service Agreement, which is funded using a federal funding stream. So just to break it down, the first and the bigger chunk of the service agreement, which is roughly $84,600, is allocated for licensing fee and just overall general support for survey administration, the analysis and reporting of all of the data. In addition, we facilitate and administer learning measures and surveys throughout the year for students, staff, and families so that we can hear their voice and we can use the data to make decisions in order to improve our programming and our evidence-based strategies towards social and emotional learning needs of our particular district community. The next part includes project management and professional development. So professional development, one of those is happening over the course of 2 days this week. but these are tailored for our district needs, and they're professional development opportunities for district and school staff. They're typically on-site, but obviously, because of the challenging time that we're having right now, we are being provided with virtual sessions. That is $5,000, and we have 2 to 3 of those per year. And then project management, where I'm working directly with a dedicated person from Panorama Ed in order to assess the programming of social emotional learning, to assess how we're aligning it with our district strategic plan, and any other just sort of overall logistical needs that I have. So the total service agreement this year, which runs from November 2020 for a whole 12-month term to November 2021, is $102,000 and some change there. Are there any questions?
Just one question, and I just need clarification to understand this. Does the social emotional learning, does this piece dovetail at all with our mental health referrals?
Yeah. So one beautiful thing about Panorama is that it's allowed us opportunities to collaborate with other teams within the school district and just really increase our interdepartmental communication. So we work very closely with Dr. Thompson-Drew, with our social workers and our school, our lead school counselors in order to, we're actually all in one meeting area once a month in order to discuss and make sure that everything is aligned and that we're collaborating and that everything sort of, it's funneled all in together and we're working in a unified manner.
Okay, so are we doing mental health referrals now? I know we stopped them in March and we were trying to get under contract. As of November, it hadn't been done. I'm just wondering where we are with that.
We actually are having mental health referrals, and when Deborah comes up next for her presentation, she can update you on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
How many people and teachers, whoever, are included in the professional development? So who are they, what are their roles, and how many do we have within the system that are taking part in this professional development?
So the professional development this week is for district and school-wide administrators and school counselors, social workers, student services individuals. And then in January, we are extending that to school staff and some school counselors are also going to be coming because they're part of student services. In January, we're extending that to school counselors and more school-based staff because we're going to kind of tailor it to the roles that people hold in the district. So we'll make sure that we're meeting their needs and what they need out of the professional development opportunity. So everyone at some point in time will get trained, if that answers your question.
I think we have a question from Board Member Motsinger.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Elizabeth. I'm curious, how are we going to assess how much value this brings to our district?
Absolutely. So if we look at the data, for instance, we have had a positive return on investment. Looking at the district data, we increased over 4 data points just in sense of belonging from the last survey administration period. So over the past year, 2019 to 2020. Panorama does a really good job, and that's part of that recency with the analysis and reporting. They do a really good job of showing us how our return on investment increases from year to year, from survey to survey.
So that's their assessment I don't know what improved on 4 data points means.
So that would be based off of those who took the survey. All of the surveys are self-reported. So it's actually the students reporting how they feel about social emotional learning in this school district, and that has improved over a certain percentage from the last year. So Panorama does it by data points, and so that's 10% increments each year.
So I guess one of my concerns, and again, I've been on the board such a long time, I feel like an old lady. But one of the things I've noticed is that we have been contracting out more and more of the work. Somebody else is monitoring or teaching things, and I definitely have a bias. My bias is we should be growing our own people versus contracting out. And so what I'm trying to understand is, are we growing capacity or are we having another contract? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that's such a great question. I'm glad that you posed it, because what I don't want to convey here is that Panorama is our SEL department, because it is not. It is one piece that helps us to assess with fidelity and with data point, and sort of, they work with research and evaluation. These are things that we don't have the capacity to do, and certainly I don't as one person on this, in this department. What we are doing from the district point of view is we're doing ongoing professional development. If you look on our website, another thing that we have done since COVID, and this was actually something that the teachers have really enjoyed and loved, and so we have a click and go calendar every month that I put together with integrated resources, lesson plans, and activities. So we are most definitely doing most of the work within the district in-house in terms of supporting our teachers, professional development-wise, assessment-wise. Panorama is just a vehicle to really make sure that we're doing that in an evidence-based way, to make sure that we're utilizing data in order to guide our decisions and the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm very concerned of the tendency to continue to sort of farm out things. And that I've watched over the years more and more of that happening instead of our own people creating these things. And so that concerns me. And I think that it's very easy to lose sight of that what social emotional learning is about is helping us all learn how to be human together in a better way. And that there may be some things, I hope we're mining the wisdom in our own district, because so often we hire out, quote, expertise. And in my experience of knowing the people who work in our district, is there is so much expertise inside of our people. And I always want to make sure we're looking there first.
Absolutely, and I think we're definitely building capacity. I want to be very clear and clarify that Panorama supports the survey administration. That is, and the data. Again, they are working with our talented research and accountability department. The piece that you're referring to, which is the actual social emotional learning and the dissemination of knowledge and skills throughout our school district, both for students and adults, and taking care of our families, that is done by the SEL department and with full support from the collaborative and the interdepartmental collaboration with mental health psych services, with instructional services, social workers. So that work has not been lost because we're utilizing Panorama. It's actually been enhanced.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. I would just add lastly.
Thank you.
I would just add lastly to sort of extend the point Board Member Motzinger is making, I think around our intentionality to make sure that we have appropriate return on our investments and that we're not overlooking any assets that we have here that could save us on any investments. That, in order to be more intentional around that, I would recommend and suggest that a lot of the discussion and action items connect to, the hard work we've put in with our strategic plan, with the goals and objectives, so that we can kind of see how some of this is aligning up to, what we've worked so hard to set in front of us as where we're going. And I do know that Goal 5 talks about climate and safety, and several of the objectives will, based on that goal, and what was shared to us tonight around Panorama and SEL appears to align very well, so I'm happy about that. But again, I would just ask that we're intentional around making sure there is highlighted alignment around our strategic plan, goals, and objectives. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, Chair Woodbury, I got the opportunity, this has been probably a year ago, to hear about the principal from Walkertown High School who was using this program and just was, it's kind of funny that it comes up after Andy's presentation about the disconnect between the teacher's perception versus the parent-student perception. And that was something that the principal at Walkertown had noticed bubble up through these Panorama surveys, was what she thought was a safe climate or a supportive climate turned out not so much when she got the survey results back. And just, her testimony was it really convinced me that this tool is necessary. So I do have a question. Do all of our schools use it, or were we just highlighting?
This year.
Okay.
This year, all of our schools will be utilizing Panorama in addition to receiving training on it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or discussion, we'll move to our next discussion item. Deborah Harris, our Chief Program Officer for Student Services, will discuss the Insight Human Services.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chair Woodbury, board members, Ms. McManus, Interim Superintendent. It is my pleasure to present to you on the long-standing relationship we have with our Insight program, and we are asking for your continued support and approval of the contract agreement. We have partnered with Insight in compliance with our board policy 5131.6 on alcohol and drug abuse. And Insight is a nationally recognized exemplary program for a random student and alcohol and drug testing program, and it's based on respect. The Insight program has two different components. We have the It's Our Call, and that is a mandatory random alcohol and drug testing for high school students who participate in extracurricular activities. And we also have It's My Call, which is a voluntary program which randomly selects high school and middle school students who wish to set an example and to lead by example. All the testing is private and confidential. The testing is random each month, and they work in conjunction with our Safe and Drug-Free Schools office. The testing is conducted by Insight. As I said before, the students are randomly selected, and all the results are confidential, and they are results from a certified lab that gives the results. These are paid through our state at-risk funding, and the cost is approximately $10,416 a month. And we have been with this program for approximately 12 years. And they provide us with services and testing, individual and family counseling, assessment and referrals, and crisis intervention. And the services are provided by personnel who are trained and certified in drug and alcohol abuse counseling. And so again, we ask for your continued support in this program. Do you have any questions?
I do. How many students do we have participating in this?
So on an average, they randomly test about 134 students per month. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, sometimes it's a little bit lower. Of course, during the time we were out on COVID, there wasn't any testing. And so, and also the students are, they do if students test positive, they do provide the treatment for the student and for the family.
So are we still paying this $10,000 even though we're not doing any testing now? Or are we getting credit? How's that handled?
We have paid some because we do have students that are continuing in treatment now that were from prior to us going out for the COVID. So we do still have some families and some students that are currently in treatment at this time.
Thank you.
I do have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So do we have any data that shows that there has been an impact prior to the 12 years? Well, I guess before we started using this company or resource since 12 years ago. So do we see that there has been an impact on the prevention of youth or student drug alcohol use?
I don't have that information right now, but I can get that to you. I'll be glad to get that information to you, Chair Woodbury.
I think I noticed in something in that maybe it was on the contract, but during COVID that we have a certain provision for students if they want to voluntarily ask for treatment during COVID times, since a lot of this stress, just because of everything that's going on, that they can voluntarily do that. And I think that's wonderful. How are students and families made aware of that so that they could take advantage of that if they needed it?
So they've worked with through the Office of Safe and Drug-Free Schools. And so the student and their family can go down to Insight and they'll perform the testing there if they wish to do so.
But I mean, are we as a school system telling families and students, if your child is experiencing if you as a family think you need this service, it's available? Are we making that information known? I guess is what I want to make sure that our students and our families or teachers, administrators, people who may be seeing these signs and symptoms of a need from a student that is everyone. I just want to make sure, to Lida's point, that we are optimizing this money with as many students as we can who are in need of this, and and I just think that we're in times now where we may have a lot of students that need this service, and we just need to make sure that we make it. We give enough information to make it as available as possible to any family or student that needs it.
We will make sure that gets out, but each school has a coordinator that works with the Safe and Drug-Free School office, and so the coordinators know that if there's a need, that they can continue to refer those students. But we will make sure that, reiterate that with all of them.
Yeah, I've had 3 high school students in this system, and I knew that they could get randomly drug tested, but I had no idea of the support the program had. So I think that definitely needs to be publicized to not only to the schools, but to our parents, that it's a service that we offer. And to Marilyn's point, there's going to be a huge need given the circumstances that our kids have been in.
I think Board Member Motzinger has her hand up.
I'd just like to say, I think treatment for students who want treatment is a very, very good and wonderful thing. I do need to say that I have always been opposed to the idea of requiring students to be drug tested. I feel that it is a real infringement on them and may indeed keep some of our students from participating in after-school activities who could most benefit from them. I think that it is very much a program that's been pretty widespread in the United States for quite some time. And as to the research question that Chair Woodbury brought up, I think it's a very valid and important one, and one we should really ask for some good feedback on. Thank you.
So So a question I would have maybe to Board Member Montsinger and any of the board members that have been here for the past, few years, because this contract obviously comes up every year or every other year, and this is just the first time I think I have seen the contract around $10,000 a month, and so I guess my question is, if that's what the money is being, if the money has been expended for this, and we don't have the data to show that it is actually making an impact, could those dollars be used for another service that could have a different impact on something else to help students with drug prevention?
Chair Woodbury, I believe that this question's been brought up a couple of times since and I've been on the board. And I think that the results may, at one time we had, kind of an update on what that looked like, and I don't know that it was significant. I don't also know that they had really, probably 12 years ago, had kept up with all of those data points. So some of it, if we had looked all the way back, might have looked different, is what I believe we were told, and other board members chime in. I myself think it's, especially the It's My Call program, that really also talks about leadership and students stepping in and showing and leading by example for other students. To me is great. That has also launched a It's My Call, Kernersville Cares for Kids group. I know many of you have attended those luncheons in years past, and that has turned into also a leadership role as well, and students advocating for each other, and also almost in a support role. So for me as a parent, like Ms. Crowley said, knowing that those services are there as well for just a student that's struggling, or a family that's struggling and needs some guidance. So to me, the $10,000 seems to be worth it. But I do agree that at some point we probably need to look very strategically at that. And I would also say that this probably fits somewhere into our strategic plan in as far as the social emotional well-being of our students. And at budget time, maybe we can look at if this is the right program or right call.
My last question is, according to our policy, it's a mandate that students be tested. Is that something that the state forces us to do because we're using state funding, and therefore a parent can't say, well, I don't want my child to be tested for drugs, but I want them to still be able to play football?
I'm not sure if it's a state mandated program. So I'm not sure if it's a state mandated program.
I know that it is based on a policy, so I
Yes,
didn't know
ma'am.
if our policy.
I think it's our policy.
Yeah.
It's been our policy, Chair Woodbury, it's been our policy, but I don't believe it's a state policy.
Yeah, it's been.
I think it's one that our district has
Yes.
adopted.
And
Like
we had
long time ago.
We've had it for years and years and years because originally, I don't think it was called Centerpoint, but it was a local, the local drugs-free, before we went with this group here, the local, it was a local. They did it for free through grants and all kinds of things like that, and so and then when that program kind of went by the wayside or had to change its funding source, then we became incorporated in this program here. So I think that's kind of the history behind it. And I'm sorry, I can't remember. Elizabeth, do you remember the name of the local? Burtwood was the person.
So it's exactly that and this happened all across the country, is that there was a whole lot of granting of funding to start these programs, and then the funding disappeared and the programs continued. And I've done some poking around, and there really is not hearty research results on these programs, but they really did. They started, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, and there was a great deal of money in it. And when our district began doing it, it wasn't costing the district anything. And then the transfer of cost happened over a period of a few years, and it never went away. And it's one of the reasons I get anxious about adding new contracts, because they do tend not to get revisited. And your point exactly about a child who, one of the hard things to me about kids is that there are some children who will experiment, mostly with marijuana, who will then choose not to participate in athletics or in drama or in any other thing that could potentially get them in trouble. And those are the very same kids who would most benefit, because extracurricular activities are one of the things that end up discouraging people out of drug use. So it's a funny set of circumstances, and one I hope that we can give some real thought to and have a good discussion about.
So, Board Member Monsinger, this is Board Member Jones, and as far as I recall, though, that our policy is not punitive. So no one's, if the test comes back positive, they're not, it's a treatment plan. They're not kicked off the football team or let go out of the marching band or the drama club. It's a treatment program and educational program.
They are required to participate in the treatment program, and they are required to go through the process as defined by somebody else.
But if they don't successfully complete it, Dion, are they then, so if they are at, so is that accurate that they have to do that? And what if they weren't successful in treating the program? Are they then removed from the organization, from the club or the team?
So if a student does have a drug or alcohol disciplinary infraction, they are suspended from athletics for a period of 30 days initially, and they are asked to participate in a treatment program to be able to restore their athletic participation abilities.
So is that just to athletics, or is that about any club, or?
It does apply to other clubs as well, not just athletics.
So for 30 days, they have a positive test, comes back for 30 days, they cannot participate.
That's right.
But Ms. Jenkins, is that that's with this program as well? Not only if they were suspect at school and they were brought in and had a drug test for that, is that both of those?
It's if it's associated with a school disciplinary infraction.
So random drug testing is a school disciplinary infraction?
No, it's only if they were had a possession of it or use of it or under the influence of it, et cetera.
Yeah.
Not the random drug testing.
So let's say I'm a soccer player and I test positive for marijuana on a random drug test. If I agree to the treatment, I successfully treat it, do I have any consequences, any ramifications?
So they're not removed from the team. They're allowed to be able to stay on the team and continue to participate as if they participate in this treatment program. The other thing I wanted to add, and I don't have the specific numbers, if Kathy Fitzjeffries were here, she could probably rattle them off the top of her head, but one area that we have seen over the last few years where there have been a lot of referrals to Insight for services is with the vaping. As several years ago, you made amendments to your student discipline policy to outlaw vaping and those devices on campus, and unfortunately, that seems to be hitting our teenage population really, really, really hard. And so there have been a lot of more referrals and services offered for students related to vaping in connection with Insight as well. And I don't have specific numbers, but anecdotally, I just know it's kind of been a little bit of an explosion. So,
do we know how many students are currently being served through Insight?
I don't know that, but we could certainly get that and share that with you.
Could we just have a really thorough report? We used to get, when Kathy was here, she was like, ball of fire with reporting every year with all that stuff. If we could maybe just have an update on all these good questions that we've asked and kind of just, because it is a different, different things. Vaping, for instance, that wasn't around, 10 years ago or whatever. So if we could just have a really thorough report sometime, I think that would be helpful to us all. I mean, it'd be helpful to me to know how prevalent drugs, alcohol, and all those things are in our school system with infractions, whether they, in everything. I just think that's something that's of interest to know whether this is good money or not.
I think Board Member Motzinger, then the interim, I think, wanted to say something.
Yes, I wanted to add to what Marilyn said, which is, I think it would be very helpful to have a differentiation of how much of those resources are because of treatment and how much of the resources are being spent on testing. And I think we really need to know the difference between that.
Okay, and I'm also going to recommend moving forward when we bring items that are costing dollars. Number one, we connect it to the strategic plan, as mentioned earlier. Number two, we tell you the funding source. I think that's important that you know, is this a grant fund? Is this, is Title IV state? Where is it coming from? And number three, we'll bring in any evaluative information on why we're actually going to spend the dollars again based on what has been the result. And so we'll start to attach that to items we bring forward that are going to cost the district money.
My question lastly would be, is there a need to get this contract approved tonight because of some deadline? I think we all want some data before we can maybe authentically, be ready for a vote tonight about this. So I don't want to mess up a deadline, but I do want us to vote based on some data that we're all asking for.
No, ma'am, we can come back with that data, but there are, just to let you know, there are still some students that are in treatment.
Okay.
That we're paying for.
So are we in the contract window to where they can continue that treatment that's already in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so we can come back, yes.
Thank you, Danny, for asking that question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last item on the discussion item is Dion Jenkins our general counsel will discuss the process for filling the board vacancy.
Good evening again, Chair Woodbury.
Good evening.
Ms. McManus and board members. I just wanted to provide a brief opportunity to review the process for filling your vacant board seat. This should be fairly fresh on your minds, given that we did the process about a year and a half or so ago and had the same discussion, but I wanted to provide an opportunity for you all as board members to have discussion about what type of process you would like to utilize in filling the seat that was vacated by Ms. Burke. Ms. Burke had a very successful election to the city council, and that puts us in this position, or puts you all in this position as a board to filling her seat. Under state law, there are no specific process that's outlined for how you can fill this position. I know some of the individuals who commented before and some who have reached out to the board have indicated there's a process that's been utilized by Forsyth County Democratic Party. There are some other statutes that apply to other counties, but for Forsyth County School Board, there's not a specific process. There is, within our policy, one additional criteria, and that is that the person must be from the same political party as the individual who is vacating the seat, and they have to otherwise be eligible to hold an elected seat. And so there's various criteria that they have to be able to fill at the state level in order to be able to hold an elected position. And so there's two ways that you could choose to handle this matter. Like you've done in recent times, you could choose to just make an appointment to the board. That process was used in 2019, and the benefits of that process are that it's a fairly quick process, and you could have someone in right away. And the other alternative is to engage in more of an application and interview process. which was used several years ago. There's precedent in the district for using either process. If you decide to go the application and interview and interest route, that would be a little bit more of a lengthier process. It would involve submitting a request, allowing people to submit an interest. You would review the applications, engage in an interview process, and then ultimately vote in an open meeting on the selected candidate. And so again, there's pros and cons to either method, but it's up to you to decide how you'd like to proceed. And again, whoever is selected for this position would fill the remainder of Ms. Burke's term, which expires in 2022. And if they would like to be, obviously, continue on the board, they would have to be elected at that time going forward. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have, but otherwise, your opportunity to have discussion about what kind of process you would like to use. And then the action item that's later on the agenda is for you to take action on what process you'd like to use for filling the seat.
So I think that from my, not that I have to go first about this at all around the process, but I think all of us are just sitting here deliberating around our experiences on the board, and I think all of us definitely have obviously had to go through it just by way of this board having to, of course, appoint board member Parker. And I do recall that process as it relates to a very concise and clean experience. And I think when we went through that process, we even talked about the experience that was a little different when we did an application process where people sent in information and we did interviews. I think maybe board member Calvert Hayes was on the other end of that, and it didn't seem to be a pleasant experience. So
It was not.
I don't know what other options we would have as it relates to the process. You know, are we just going to, as a board, make recommendations as it relates to what the policies say around it? Of course, obviously, the appointment having to fulfill the Democratic Party piece, and then any consideration around also whether they should be in District 1 or just being a Democrat. So I'm interested right now to kind of hear, you know, other board members' opinion around a process that is just based on the way we did the process of board member Parker, or maybe looking at this time doing something that's more engaged as we did to bring on board member Calvert Hayes.
Chair Woodbury, so during my time on the board, we've had three vacancies to fill up until this time. All of those seats were Republican seats. And the first was when we did the application process on the prior board. That was a, you know, in hindsight, in the beginning, it seemed like it was maybe the best process and the most transparent process. I think at the end of that, my reflection and many others on the board at that time, Elizabeth can jump in, she may have a different thought, but what I recall was that it seemed as though, you know, these were people who were kind of volunteering and putting themselves out there. The process took a good deal of time, and then I felt like we, at the end, were kind of putting people who had, because it was a true interview and it was done in public, and then the board had to, with them in the room, kind of select who they were. So it's like being elected like we were on the ballot, but seeing the people actually have to pull the lever for you or against you. It was just a little tense and tight, and I think at the end, so then when an additional seat came up that year that we had to fill, we did it through a different process and did not do the application process. And that's just the best of my recollection. And I would also like to say that as a Republican member of this board, and this being a Democrat seat, I think it's important that we hear from our Democrat members on the board and that you all take the lead. I think it was just like about a year and a half ago that you were all very gracious in the fact that we had a Republican seat come open, and the Democrat members on this board, who are the majority, really left that to the Republicans to kind of try to lead on how that process would look like. And so I think that we need to give you definitely that same respect. And so, that's just my 2 cents, that I think it definitely needs to kind of, I will give a lot of consideration to what you want as the process, and also who you want to fill that seat.
Board Member Motsinger.
Okay, and I would definitely like to hear from our other Democratic colleagues. I personally know, I think that when we last appointed Ms. Parker, we were in a very stressful and difficult moment as a board, fairly new, and Ms. Parker, unlike any of the other people who are being considered, had a long-standing time as a board member and could step in a way that is unusual. We don't have an experienced Democratic board member who's been, brings that experience and that knowledge with them. Personally, I think we should have some process where we go about interviewing people. There's a lot of stress going on in the community about this process. So, for example, the called Executive District 1 Committee, there is argument amongst the Democrats whether such an entity actually exists or doesn't exist. I understand the desire to have a vote and to have a preference, and unfortunately, in this circumstance, you just don't. And I know that's painful. Same thing for FCAE, who are very involved in public education. They're all in. They've also presented a candidate. I think that at the end of the day, it is the board's job to pick this replacement, and I think we should have an open process, even though it's longer. I think we should take the time to do it right and do it well. And so I would prefer us to interview people, have a real process, let people see who's our options. Let other board members see who the options are, because people don't necessarily know everyone as well as they might. So that would be my preference. But I'm very interested to hear from my fellow board members.
I went through. Excuse me. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I heard everything that Elizabeth said, and I also appreciate the negative experience that you went through, Wida, as well. I don't want to put anybody on a hot seat and, all of that, because I understand from you that was not pleasant. But I would like to take some time, because it is such an important decision, and I would just like to hear a little bit more, get a little more detail from the candidates who would like to apply for this. I know some of them have written to us, but I just, not that we have to have a big public forum, but for our benefit, I'd like to know just a little bit more about the experience that the candidates have, and a little bit more about what their priorities are. And I do think just sitting back and taking a little bit of time would be a good thing. That would be my preference.
I think that in listening to Board Member Kaplan and Board Member Motsinger as Democrats, I think that the public display of the interview becomes in my opinion, very, extensive and putting somebody on the spot versus maybe we can send out a questionnaire of some kind and get those whom are interested, candidates that fulfill the obligation around being a Democrat to respond, get those back to us, and then that's what will empower us as a board to make a final decision.
I like that.
Can I ask a question? Because, Ms. Jenkins, I also years ago participated in an interview process for replacing Ms. Geneva Brown's seat, and now it's been a long time, but I remember us as a board interviewing them, but I don't remember. I remember those being individual interviews and not everybody in the same room, and I don't remember us voting on them in public, in front of those folks or in public. Is there a certain process that we have to do if we do an interview process? Because I guess I don't remember it being as public, I suppose, is what I'm hearing happened in Ms. Hayes' case. And maybe I'm not remembering well. That's quite possible. I'm getting to be an old lady, but I don't remember that being quite that public.
And unfortunately, I was not here during that process, so I can't speak from personal experience. But I can say, though, that the statute requires that so the consideration of a member of a public body, qualifications, et cetera, has to be done in an open session. And so it can't be done in a private type setting. And again, I can't comment on what was done before, but I was here when Ms. Calvert Hayes was selected, and it was definitely a more open process. We were actually in 223 back there all around the room, and there were questions that were asked. The voting, though, did occur by ballot. And so it wasn't your typical, raise your hand if you approve or oppose. It was by ballot. But of course, the results of the ballot had to be made public upon request. And so there are ways that it can, if you decide to go that route, that it could be handled by ballot. So it's not as...
That's what I remember was a ballot, and then then the person was just, that was that. And so
yes.
That was person, so, okay.
It was, for me, it was very, very intimidating. And not only was it just intimidating, but I liked the people that were up and were running against me. And I felt like they felt the very, very same way. I was a fortunate one, but it wasn't something that you really rejoiced about because I felt really almost bad that I had gotten the votes and these other ones that were doing their best, were left out the way. And they found out, it didn't take long to find out who voted for you and who didn't vote for you. And for me, it was hard, because gosh, you want everybody to like you. And then also they went through a process where they asked us questions. Well, we hadn't been on the board, and all we knew was really kind of who we had talked to and what we had read in the newspaper. So as far as really coming up with exactly what had happened and being a part of something, we weren't. It was kind of like taking a test and not studying for it. So that made it difficult also. And and I can't imagine what it was like for the ones that tried really hard and didn't get it. I was really the lucky one. But for me, I hate for anybody to have to go through something like that again. I mean, I think if we do it, it shouldn't be where we're all gathered around in a room and, we're doing our ballots and, people are sitting there on pins and needles. And it was just very, very intimidating. And like I said, the questions, I got a question about something that kind of blew my mind. I knew enough to answer it, but if my facts were right, who knew? But, you know, that was pretty tough.
If you would like
So,
oh, go ahead, Ms. Motzinger.
one option then is to, whether it's to have some questions or have people send in notes, you know, an application, this is why I want to be considered. If people think that being interviewed is too upsetting, we could have an open meeting where we all meet with the applications in hand, have a discussion, but don't ask somebody. I mean, you can't say to people they can't come and sit in the room. Of course they can. But if you feel that the interview process is too upsetting, I just think that we should be seeing something in writing from anybody who wants to be on the board that expresses why they want to be on the board, what they believe they can offer to our Board of Education, and for every board member to have the opportunity to read that and consider it. I think otherwise, people are just voting by who they already know and who they want. And I think it's worth at least trying to do an open process and to hear from different folks. So I also understand, Lyda, that you found that whole process very painful, and I understand that. I understand that that's been painful to you. I personally think running for office is so insanely painful that it's amazing anybody ever does it. But I wouldn't suggest that we stop having elections. So I think that whoever it is going to have to deal with being a public figure, with all of the good things and really bad things that entails. So that's my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Deanna.
I was just going to say, I think that's certainly, based on the feedback, it sounds like maybe there's some kind of questionnaire or an application, and you know, I'm happy to help in any way. If you all would like to submit questions you'd like to see, and we can compile those and send those out for your approval prior to that. I would recommend, though, that if you want to include an interest letter component, I think that's great, but I do think that it should be the same questions offered to everybody, just so everyone is on the same playing field, so to speak, when they're submitting their applications.
Ms. Jenkins, I think we did an application process, and if I remember correctly, I think we even, as a board, narrowed those maybe to 5 or 3. I think we had 5.
Yes, I think either 4 or 5.
Something like that. And then those are the ones that we brought in and talked to. I mean, certainly the Democrats, you all need to definitely decide what kind of process you guys want, but I do remember that we did do some honing down of all, because we did have to look at a bunch of applications prior to, so.
Yes.
My last suggestion would be consideration around our policy around filling the vacancy to, go ahead and specify it's a District 1. I think the historical context and reason why the ask was that District 1 provides some balance and some sense of equity on the board. And I think that at least we know that if there is a District 1 vacancy on the board, then somebody who lives in District 1 will, adhere to, the requirements that when you actually go out and campaign, you have to live in District 1 to fill this seat. So I do think that we need to, include that in the bylaws part of how to fulfill the vacancy around, I guess any of our vacancies with, where you live in the county. So I would put that in the requirements to apply. You have to be a Democrat and live in District 1.
In previous application processes, that was included as a requirement, that the person not only have the same political affiliation, but reside in the same electoral district.
Okay. Are there any other questions or discussion around this discussion item? Okay, thank you, Dion. The next item on our agenda is action items. First, we need to consider approval of the compensation recommendations. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, well, are there any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Board Member Bramer?
She's muted.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. The next item is to consider approval of athletic funding.
Move approval.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Board Member Bramer?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Look like everybody up here had their hands up, Dion. Okay, next item is to consider approval of the custodial services contract for January 2021 to May 2021.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
Yes,
Oh.
this is Elizabeth. Just one other thing. But that is dependent on our, if school for some reason did not open in January, if COVID got much worse, for example, can that be beginning when students return to school? Can that be, the language be amended to custodial contract for when students are returned to school in the building?
I think Ms. McManus is answering that question, but I recall Lauren Richardson putting that disclaim in when she made the presentation, that this was contingent upon how we returned.
Yeah, if Lauren is, I think Lauren is in the building, so if she comes just to clarify that. Because I'm sure she's probably in the other room.
I just want to make sure that we're not hiring temporary people to come in on a certain date,
While they get.
if it turns out we have to delay the opening.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll go back to that, where we'll see if Lauren can't, Ms. Richardson can't come over. We'll go to the next action item before we put it up for a vote.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Consider approval of activity bus purchase.
Move approval. Second.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Here comes Lauren.
Board Member Bramer? Motion passes.
She said yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay, we'll go back up to the consider approval of the custodial services contract. Lauren Richardson, could you talk to us about, Ms. Motzinger, could you explain your concern again around the contract for Ms. Richardson?
I just wanted to make sure that the start date would be dependent on when students actually return to school.
Sure, so. Sorry, go ahead.
So if it turns out that post-Christmas, our numbers just keep going up and it's just too dangerous, for example, that we would not have people coming back before we actually needed them in the buildings.
So as we do make adjustments, we do have teachers in the building, so we do need to ensure that we have custodial services available to continue to support that need. There's two different pieces in the contract. There's the additional duties that are related to only children being in the building, and that's that additional maximum allowable cost for the CARES funds. So if there are no students in the building, those services will not continue. But the general cleaning of the building, if there is staff in there, those things will still continue. If we find that students do not return and that's prolonged, We would then look to come back with an amendment to the contract to possibly make an additional change to cut back on custodial services again. But we do need to give the contractor time, as they need to fill those positions, probably a 30-day window to be able to get all of those positions filled. So if we delay the approval of the contract, it will be harder and harder to put them in the roles to provide services to students in the building.
Okay, and, you know, obviously I'm concerned that if COVID gets much worse, whether we would want staff in the buildings, but that's another conversation. And you're saying that we have to really have this contract 30 days before we would be having increased staff in regardless?
Yes, so approval of the contract this evening allows us to communicate with the contractor to ensure that we have custodial services in place for the January 11th date that we currently have on the calendar. If we delay the approval, we can't necessarily guarantee or hold our current contractors to a certain number of employees in certain services. And then again, if we need to make an amendment because something changes, we can certainly look to do that, and that would be a relatively quicker and easier process.
And a great deal of the funding for extra cleaning comes out of CARES dollars, and that's correct?
Yes, and so those extra duties are very much related to the occupancy of the buildings. So if the students are not present or staff is not present, some of those services won't take place, and therefore those funds won't be spent. Okay, but those funds aren't coming out of regular funds, they're coming out of CARES funds, is that correct? That is correct. That is CARES-specific funds.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there, can we consider approval of custodial services contract for January 2021, May 2021?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor? Board Member Mott?
Yes.
Board Member Bramer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Motion passes. The next item is to consider approval of the sale of surplus property.
Move to approve.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. The next item is to consider approval of the proposed revision to policy 5125.5, directory information.
Move approval.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. The next item for approval is the exception to policy 3250.2 for student fees.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further question or discussion?
Just a point of clarification, we reduced that to 0?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good.
All in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Thank you. Next item is to consider approval of the Admiral Security Contract.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Next is to consider approval of the McGraw-Hill purchase contracts.
Move approval.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item is to consider approval of the eNome Inc. Gold Book subscription service.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. The next item is to consider approval of the Panorama Service Agreement.
Move approval.
Second.
Any further question or discussion? All in favor?
This is Elizabeth. I just want to stress that we need to review in a year whether this is a good use of funds so that it doesn't become another permanent program.
Thank you.
Just a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I also comment? I was reading reading through the contract, and it said something about how it's been here for 4 years in Forsyth County. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Something in the contract about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds about right.
It has been in our
district for the past few years. I believe this is the 4th year. They started with a smaller group of schools as a pilot, and then every year they've added additional schools. So I think by this year, they'll have the service available for all schools.
So we've approved it for 4 years. Okay.
Yes, it's been a part of the budget for the last 4 years.
I think it started at Carver, or at least Carver was one of the schools, because Carolyn Hi Davis did an excellent presentation with her staff around the results that they were finding with the students.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
If there are no more questions or discussion, all in favor?
No.
Okay. Could you raise your hand again for all in favor? Dion, did you get for all in favor? Okay. Any opposed? I thought I heard somebody say no.
Oh, I'm a no. Raymer's a no.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. The next item is the consider approval of the Insight Human Services.
Chair Woodbury, I'd like to table this so that we could have more information come back to the board before we take a vote.
Okay.
I would second that.
Okay. All in favor for, if there are no further question or discussion about the item, all in favor of tabling the Insight Human Services?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. The motion passes to table the approval of the Insight Human Services. The next item is to consider approval of from the Hart contract for Carver High School.
Move approval.
Second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. The next item is to consider approval of the Institute for Student Achievement contract for Carver High School.
Second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item is to consider approval of proposed equity advisory members list.
Move to approve.
Second.
Board Member Motzinger, you have a question?
Yes, I think that the question about adding somebody from the Hispanic community is a really good one. And so I would like to vote yes with the agreement that we would add another member to the advisory committee. And I would leave that to Effie McMillan to make a good choice.
Okay. So then the motion is amended to add.
Second.
Yes, okay. Any further question or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
And that's the amended, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The amended, yes.
Yes.
The last action item is to consider approval of a process for filling the board vacancy.
I'd like to make a motion for a process to fill in the vacancy with an application, process for District 1 with anybody with a vested interest in District 1, and the mandate to be a Democrat.
There a motion to approve?
Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear it clearly.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion on the process to fill the vacancy, that the application process be in effect, and that anybody with a vested interest in District 1, and of course, the mandate is that they're a Democrat.
Thank you.
Could you clarify vested, does vested mean live in District 1?
Well, I think if somebody has, maybe they're living there, maybe they're not at the moment, but they're close to District 1, or, you know, I just feel like a vested interest is how I would like to word it.
Second.
Any question or discussion?
I'm the Republican member, sorry, but I really do feel like that District 1, that the person living in District 1 would be important. I know if, you know, there's history there for having 2 representatives for District 1, so, you know, I understand the vested interest piece, but I really I'd rather be someone from District 1.
This is Board Member Bramer, and whereas I agree, and I think the sentiment around being invested in District 1 is because we've had so many evictions lately that people may be staying temporarily in District 2 because of the lack of jobs currently with COVID, and I don't want to rule out anyone who might have to be living temporarily outside of District 1.
Board Member Motzinger, did you have your hand up?
I don't have my hand up, but I think there are really good people who don't live in District 1 who are interested in this position. I also think there are a bunch of really good people who do live in District 1 who are interested in this position. And at this point, I would probably, even though that excludes some people who will be fabulous board members, and I hope they know that 2 years is not too soon to start running, I think it should be someone from District 1. So I think amongst our Democrats, we're 2 and 2.
Dion, can we take a separate vote on District 1 and then on application process? Because I think that's what's going to kind of complicate the motion if we can kind of get feedback from the application process, yes or no, and then District 1, yes or no.
Well, the motion that's on the table right now includes both, and so unless the person is willing to amend the motion, their motion to separate that, it would have to be both elements. But if that motion fails, then someone can make an alternative motion.
Could I also just ask some clarification around the application process? Of course, I know the application, but could we spell out what that looks like after that? Like, is it, I think Ms. Motzinger brought up an idea of not an interview, but maybe just us all in the room reviewing. Is that what we're speaking of? Just, okay.
Any further question or discussion? Okay. All in favor for the motion as is to include application and only invested interest in District 1? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
No.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion fails. Is there another motion?
I would like to make a motion that we have an application process and pick someone who is eligible to run for that seat by being both a Democrat and living in District 1.
Second.
If there are no further question or discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Move approval. Second.
If there are no further questions or discussions, all in favor? Aye. Okay. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's update and board announcements. Yes. Yes.
So we're just going to, a couple of minutes just to update on a few items. And first one, he probably just seeing this for the first time, hopefully, Kevin. But anyway, this could have been on recognitions earlier, but I wanted to add it to my updates. And Kevin, just so you know, was named as the Regional Technology Director of the Year by P-TECH.
Wow.
So wanted to,
Yay, Kevin, yay!
yeah, so very excited. And now he goes on to the next round. Hopefully he'll win for the whole state.
Yes.
And then return to in-person learning. I wanted to, that we've sent a lot out about this. It's on our webpage to remind everyone of the entry plan for the return plan for students to return to school. And so we do have an aggressive timeline returning after the holidays. I know we've been getting some emails about were we coming back together at all prior to that initial start date. And at this time, we don't, our next meeting, as you know, is on the 12th. If I'm going to pose, if this board would want to come together just to analyze things at the beginning of January, we could do something the week of the 4th, if you have an appetite for that. And that would be just to review again the plans, 2nd, 4th, and go through everything one more time, maybe look at our data and have one more chance. I wanted to put that out there. We'll come back. Yes. We can come back to that
Yes.
Okay, let's come back, and we don't have to. Here's the return plan again. Inclement weather tomorrow, as everyone knows, we're remote learning for everyone. That is across the board, and also district offices and schools for anyone going to those places are going to open after 12. All right, so I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that the weather's supposed to be possibly dangerous up until about that time. Also, just for all the folks that have been asking about, are we going to have any normalcy and fun on a snow day? I get that asked all the time, and I wanted to let everyone know that yes, on a snow day, I promise parents, kids, families, and myself that we will do a snow day in the traditional sense of the word, because that will also be my first snow day.
I was going to say, do you know what to do on a snow day?
I'm going to go out in the snow, hopefully. It'll be awesome. So anyway, as a Florida person, I look forward to that day. And so everyone, yes, we will do that, and we'll let you know in advance of that. My last thing is, and then we can go back to the first question, but my last item is, I visited South Fork. I think it's really important because we get emails a lot, and I know many of you are trying to get onto schools, but I went to South Fork earlier this week, and I was absolutely impressed, and I wanted to include this on my highlight. So Principal Dr. Raphael Green Hughes, I wanted to compliment her staff is amazing, and I just wanted to share a few quick highlights of that visit. And you can see teachers were teaching using both of our the remote, kids remote and in person. This teacher, I told him I would love to be in your science class. He had everything set up in the room, science experiment going live. Here he is again with the kids on the screen. This is a 5th grade class, so they were on the screen. He's teaching from his classroom. Here's another teacher. There's 2 different pictures side by side here, but the one teacher with the sweater is, they both probably have sweaters on, but with kind of the leopard print sweater, she is also teaching remote, but right there with the camera, right there. I told Kevin, you would have been so excited to see this. And then the teacher on the right, he's doing a small breakout group of kids with literacy. So he's actually doing more in-depth tutorial with a breakout group. Then if you see here, you can see another teacher. Just the technology was unbelievable. And the level of instruction that I saw for both in-person students and virtual students was really unbelievable. If these are just some more pictures, and you can see this. I just wanted to give you an example of what our teachers are doing. And the one with the yellow, that's a plexiglass, and they've actually put colors on the outside of the plexiglass, so it just looks very inviting when you walk into the room. But again, students on the screen, students in the classroom, more teachers, more interaction. Oh my gosh, these pre-K teachers are unbelievable. On the right, she's actually doing something with an egg. I mean, I have to just say, the best instruction. I was so excited when I left this school. And then you could see a group that was in the PE room. They were doing yoga, which is very much needed, I think, by everyone right now. And so then I just wanted to be able to wish everyone a happy holidays. This is an amazing district with amazingly talented leaders and teachers and students, families, community. And so I want everyone to please take some downtime, enjoy the holiday, and we will see everyone in 2021. So thank you for that.
I think that we wanted to talk about the proposed meeting the week of the 4th. I think there is there some general consensus so that it doesn't become a vote issue? A vote issue. Anybody have any conversation around or discussion around coming back on the week of the 4th to kind of look at some things and take some further guidance from the superintendent, the interim superintendent?
It's just my opinion. I think we've put the date out for the 11th. I don't know, the week of the 4th, what data really we're gonna, we'll have community, but again, we're also hearing, the students to be back in school. My concern is around if we have a date set out there for the 11th, parents are trying to plan that with their employers. I think also, anxiety a little bit with our own staff of changing, those types of things around. And so I don't know what I don't really know unless we saw something that was happening in the community and we needed to call a special called meeting for something like that. But otherwise, I think to set the expectation that the 11th is what we're shooting for, I just think we get so many parents get so many mixed messages when they're trying to provide childcare and so many other things. And I also think it's extra anxiety with staff of just not knowing, and is this going to change again? And of course, it's subject that it could. We don't know. That's the thing. But just for me, I would rather not schedule a meeting, and if we need to have something that's called, that we can do that. That's just my take.
I agree.
Aren't the EOCs coming around that time period too? And we don't yet know. The death numbers in the United States are climbing at 3,000 a day. We don't yet know if they're going to waive the EOCs. And if they waive the EOCs, we have another whole issue with those as well. So I think we should.
So the only way so as of right now, the state is determining the EOC. If something changes with that, something changes, we'll communicate that. That change would mean that high school students needing to take those exams would not come into school the week of the 11th. I think it's actually the 13th. So we'll keep close eye on all of this during the winter break, and we can just stay in touch whether a next step is needed. But we'll keep you posted on if anything comes different.
This is Elizabeth. I personally think we should have the meeting on the calendar. I would love it if I'm completely wrong and the numbers have not infected people and hospital use have not gone through the roof. I will be very happy to go to a meeting on January 4th and be able to review, gosh, things look really good around here. Nobody would be happier to see that than me. But I think it's easier to put something on the books and not need it than to try to get it on the books right around the first of the year. So my preference is to go ahead and schedule this meeting. That's what I believe.
I do too.
It looks like, Dion, we probably gonna have to take a vote.
It's not an action, it's not on the agenda for action, so you'd have to amend the agenda to add it, or if you wanted Ms. McManus to just follow up with you all after the fact, but it's not on the agenda for an action item.
Okay.
I can follow up, and Chair Woodbury, we can communicate during the break.
Okay. So I wanted to make the additional announcement around Friday, December the 18th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The Arts Council of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County blood drive will occur, and just to make sure the community knows about that. And then the next item on our agenda is meeting, of course, open to the public, where comments are received on any topic that's appropriate. Again, you will speak only to myself as the chair, and if you have any questions, we will try to get staff to respond as quickly as we can. We ask that your comments are respectful and kind and doesn't discuss any sensitive, private, student, or personnel. And do know that if the comments become personal or contentious or disruptive, I do reserve the right to end this comment period. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And the first person on the list is Robert Yoakley.
Thank you for joining us on Your School Channel, Cable 2.